London System Part 4. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before we get started, hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. We are on London number 4 here. Make sure you guys are getting a book. It is 50% off using JC London at the checkout all of the month of March. So it is 50% off. Go and get yours. We're on London number 4. So London number 4 today, we're looking at typical London system end games. It's very good to understand your end games. And even Gadakamsky himself said that some of the best end games you can get from the white pieces is actually in the London system. Actually, let's see what they have here in the wording. In this lesson, we're going to look at various end games that are typical of the London system. There is no single specific London system end game, but there are very few which arise quite often and are most characteristic. For example, in lesson 7 about queenside play, that's for you to go check. We saw a variation with queen b3 where the queens were quickly exchanged and white put pressure on the queen side. That type of position leads to a fairly typical ending, but we're not going to cover it in this chapter since the reader can study it in lesson 7. So you go to lesson 7, right? Magnus against my guy Benjamin Bach. Yeah, watch, right? And it says similar in lesson 8. There was a good theme here. Okay, perfect. In this lesson, we're going to focus on endings based on the most usual pawn structures. Look at this legendary game. Magnus Carlsen versus Benjamin Bach. Big Bach from the block. Shout out to my man's Big Bach. All right, so here we go. D4, this was in 2016. D4, knight f6. Bishop f4, London system style. Bach goes for d5. E3 from the world champion. C5 from Bach. And after c5, instead of playing the regular London, which you would see knight c3, even pawn c3, he actually opted, and it's good for you guys to know the flexibility of the London system. We can play knight to c3 here. Wow. JOBAVA style. JOBAVA style, you know what I mean? I'm a big fan of knight c3, JOBAVA style. The JOBAVA attack, a very popular line that we've already seen, which is a cross between the Richter-Veresov and the London system. C takes d4 from Bach. Black can also play a6. E takes d4 and then a6, preventing the knight jump to b5 because usually that will happen. So a6 prevents that. They're talking about a line that shows that. Bishop to d3, development. Knight to c6, more development, and then this move right here, knight c to e2. This is a rare move. What does it say? The idea seems better than the most usual, which is knight g to e2. That's the most usual move. White's idea is to be able to bolster the defense of the d4 pawn with c2, c3. So like you would see in a French defense, defending the d4 pawn, like, or sort of a Khan exchange as well. That's actually what he just said. Wow. Transposing to the structure of the exchange of the variation of the Khan, exchange variation of the Khan with bishop d3, c2, c3, which we've noted in other games. Okay, bishop g4, c3 happens, e6, queen d2, unpinning his bishop or his queen from the bishop here. He gets out the way. Bishop h5 from Bach, and then bishop to g5. Cool move, interesting idea. White wants to clear the f4 square for the knight. So he wants to put this knight on e2 on the f4 square. If you see here, especially when we're talking about structures, white structure, pawn-wise, is excellent, but black's is too. So in-game-wise, I mean, this is just an equal game right now. We're getting pieces out, trying to figure out what we're doing, right? I mean, white's developing, black's developing, sort of equal. Bishop to g6, black goes back. It says a good plan for black is to exchange his theoretically bad bishop, the light square bishop. Why is it bad? Pawns on the same color of the bishop. All these white pawns for black on the same color as this light square bishop. It's going to be a bad bishop. A good plan for black is to exchange it for white's good bishop on d3. Knight f4, bishop takes, knight takes d3. I used to play the London, but you know I changed to KID. He's in defense. Okay. You know, you can only play the London is with white, though, so you can't play KID with white. But you can play KI8. He's in attack. Okay, what happened? Knight takes d3. This position is equal, but that doesn't mean it is dead. Let me actually say that again. That's some fire there. Like that's some 100% fire. The position is equal, but that doesn't mean it's dead. Wow, that was a message for the people in the back. That was a message. I play KID with black. Very good, very good. Definitely check my YouTube videos for that. The position is equal, but it doesn't mean the position is dead. The pawn structure is unbalanced, and white can make use of the e5 square for his knight. So let's see the in-game technique. Bishop to d6. Now, of course, it's not even in-game yet, but this is just equal positions. You know how Magnus is, squeezing water from a stone here. In these equal positions. But knight f3, he has a trump card here with this pawn, the square on e5. Very weak, aiming to control the e5 square. Bach plays knight to e4. Look at this move, boy. Look at this. His queen's hanging, but your queen hanging. Like, oh boy. I mean, Bach with the tactics, right? Mr. Tactics himself, right? With the survival up there in the 200, something ridiculous. Knight e4. Played against Magnus Carlsen. An interesting idea, seeking to exchange queens. Very nice. Bishop takes d8 from Magnus. Knight takes. King takes. Rook takes. Rook h to e1. This position, super equal. Super equal. Right? London system style. Now you're going to see how you can use your pieces in this in-game to actually have some type of advantage. Right? Some type of advantage. Other things to watch indicate knight c to e2. That's actually a good question, Tycorn, to indicate. That's actually just kind of a matter of taste, because knight g to e2 is actually the move you play, but knight c to e2 was more of a matter of taste, and the world champion actually wanted to do that. Okay, let's see what this says. This structure can arise in several variations of the London system. White dominates the center and the half-open e file. Black usually tries to launch a minority attack, minority 2 versus 3. Minority attack on the queen side, exerting pressure along the half-open c file and preventing white from advancing his queen side pawns. Okay, perfect. Let's go back. Rook h to e1, and then black castles. Let's just say, in this type of position, which is not quite an in-game yet, it's often best not to castle instead and bring the king into the middle of the board. This is very good for you guys. King e7. Wow. King e7. a4, f6 with a balanced position. Interesting. It's kind of weird. Good job there, Key Walks. You drew a GM in blitz. That's fire. Good work. Castles. So black castles. White plays a4. Stopping the expansion of the minority attack. a4, rook to c8. And he could have played a4 anyway. In fact, or b5, sorry. b5, a takes, and rook h6. So he could have played b5 anyway. But the reason for not playing b5 is obvious. After we capture, you play rook a6, giving a clear advantage to white. But a5, they say, was more interesting. a4 from world champion Magnus Carlsen, rook c8 from Bach. a5 from Magnus, expanding. What website link is this? This is Forward Chess. You can use London, Command London, get this book. We're looking at this typical in-game that you would get in the London system. What white is doing, and this is more of just the ideas over the moves, because your games all are going to be different. Things are going to be different in your game. But what you see here is the expansion on the queen side, the a-pawn getting up here with defense. He's probably going to play b4. He has the e5 square on lock. My pieces look good. My king is in the center, but not like all the way in the center. At least it's like centralized, getting ready for the endgame to come. Rook f to e8, and then he puts the knight on e5. Carlsen realizes that to be able to continue putting pressure on the queen side, he must exchange the minor pieces. Did you hear that lesson? Did you hear that lesson, bro? Are you hearing the free lesson? Carlsen realized that to be able to put pressure on the queen side in this type of position, especially I've expanded, he's trying to use the minority attack. I need to exchange the minor pieces. So get rid of them. Bishop takes, e5. They said this was a dubious concession. In fact, knight takes was better. D takes. Wow, really? I mean, I probably would have taken with the knight, to be honest. f6, bishop e7. Okay, that's a good line. Bishop takes e5 though. Knight takes. And here we go. This is right here. I mean, look at this. This is a simple in-game. Simple in-game that it feels like anyone, most of us, anyone really, I mean, can kind of try to hold this in-game. I mean, this is, there's no like, I'm better than you, you're better than me, right? But watch. Now we have a rook in-game with the structure is quite common in the London system. I'm going to say that again, right? Now we're going to have a rook ending with a structure that is quite common in the London system. If you play in London, you're going to see this a lot. If you play in London, You're going to see this a lot. Endgames are boring. I mean, it just depends on how you look at them, too. Count Olaf, because I have felt like that many times, right? But then, even as I gotten stronger, I had to study more endgame. It didn't get easier, and it didn't get more fun. But you do like the, they are important. They're so important, says Mr. AO, correct. And as you start to study them more, you start to have a love for them, to be honest. Got to win the game somehow? Yes. Yes, King F7. All right, so King F7, Rook A4. With the idea of playing Rook B4 and then Rook to B7. Rook to C4, and they put this as a bad move here. Black takes a radical decision. Offering to exchange. Excuse me. Offering the exchange of rooks, but this isn't a good idea. This isn't a good idea. After Rook takes C4, D takes C4. And then right here, Carlsen with a in-game super move here. B3. Oh my goodness, sacrificing a pawn. Look at that. Great move from Carlsen. The idea is to set up a central pawn majority in the motion and to control the C4 square. One huge thing, and this is outside of the London System book, well, actually one of the books that we already covered in the series, I'll link it actually here in YouTube for you guys, is the Russian in-game handbook. If you guys remember that Russian in-game handbook, but we'll talk about maybe pawn structures on another series, but pawn structures is good to understand. So they talking about here, he gets a central pawn majority. So getting 2 pawns versus everything else. Right. Well, of course, that's going to be nice to have. He gets rid of this. And understanding the pawn structure is how he was able to find B3. Rook to C8. If C takes B3, he plays C4. That's the whole idea. Look at that. Pawns are now going to be better. I'm going to swing this rook over. Take on B3, put pressure the B pawn, and actually use these pawns to win. Crazy game, right? Rook D8, King C3. And it's telling you this is what would have happened. Clear advantage for white is what it says. B3, Rook C8. Rook goes to E1, he heads to the B file. C takes, he gets to the B file. Rook C4, we take the B pawn. And then Rook to A4, he's behind the pawn now. Black seeks activity, which is hard to not seek activity. Rook takes B7, he brings the rook back, and boom. Here we go. Now we got this. Now everything's shifted, white's up a pawn. Now the ending is 1 for white without any problems. Pass C pawn, pass D pawn, and out of nowhere in the London system, white is just winning. It's just winning out the endgame. Crazy. I dig it, FM. Thank you, Paderi. Appreciate you. Now the ending's just 1, right? The central pass pawns are decisive advantage, and in addition, black's A pawn remains weak. Black played Rook A2, King D3. They said King E3 was not bad either, but King D3 letting him take the pawn. C4. Rook takes G2. C5 happens, so past pawns must be pushed. He pushing it through. King F5. Rook E1, keeping the king immediately cut off. Rook B2 and then C6. And that's it. Black resigned after Rook B8. There was D5, and the white pawns are going to roll. But, I mean, this was Bach playing, or Magnus playing Bach. As you see in the beginning, right? And this was a very simple game here. There was not like a whole bunch of tactics. Think about that, chat. Right? How simple this game was, especially for players that like to play simple games. Not lots of tactics, or players that like to play the London system and variations of it. Right? As we go through this game again, what happened? We got a solid structure. We developed our pieces first. We literally did nothing spectacular. Develop piece. Move this knight from C3 to E2. Strengthen the structure. Look at the pawns. Look very good. Right. I didn't push F3. I didn't push H3. I got the queen out of the pin. My moves make sense. Bishop G5 pins the knight. Okay, knight F4. My knight is better on F4 than it was on E2. So he improved his position. We made a trade. My knight looks good on D3 now. I'm covering E5. Now the other knight comes to the E5 square. That was a nice move by Bach. And now, right, we make some moves. We get to this game. Like, we expand a little bit. But this is the key part right here is a lot of people get to a position like this and be like, all right, this is already a draw. Like, literally, this is already a draw. Bruh. Many people can shake hands, or they're bored, or they don't know what to do, or like they just don't care. And you can still win many games here from this position here, or I mean, especially understanding the plans and ideas and the pawn structures and the in-game, and just wanting to fight as well. As Magnus play here, Rook A4, he's just trying to get the rook to the B file, and which caused this blunder in a way to happen because this rook was about to get active, so he didn't want that to happen. So after captures, he just missed it. B3 was a brilliant idea, and then he was able to go go on to win this game here. So, all right, this was a typical in-game right here. Obviously for the London system, as we can't cover so much of this book here. So you're gonna have to cover the rest, obviously, on your own here. We do have one more video to do for this series of the London, and then we'll have another series for you guys as well. So make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you on the next video.